Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Instead of playing catch-up, we are ahead preventatively.
Trying to get ahead of the storm. Cities, towns, and plowing companies are in full preparation mode ahead of more snow.
It is going to be first big storm of the year.
Plus,
it's not necessary to get your point across by spewing hate at another group.
There are other peaceful ways and means to address these issues.
Vancouver police report an uptick in hate crimes amid the Israel-Hamas war. The calls for peace from local leaders. And for the love of Kpop, we dive into the massive global popularity.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Brace yourselves. Fresh snow is expected to blanket much of BC late into Wednesday. That includes us here on the South Coast, where last week's snow snarled traffic and left vehicles and people stranded. As Joel Ballard reports, officials have all hands on deck this time.
This is our salt shed where we keep our salt for the snow event.
The salt is packed high at the operations center in Surrey, where city crews have been busy.
How much salt do you think on a day like tomorrow where we have a big snow event?
It's around 1,000 tons per 24-hour event when we go through salt in the whole city. So that's what we go through.
Yeah, so just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Crews were out at 4 a.m. prepping the roads, first with brine, then salt.
Instead of playing catch-up, we are ahead preventatively, making sure that the roads are in a condition that when the event comes, they are safe for our citizens.
Snowfall warnings are in place across much of the province. It's expected to start falling once the clock strikes midnight.
It is going to be first big storm of the year.
Environment Canada says it could bring up to 20 centimeters to the south coast, maybe even more further east.
After the cold comes the moisture and the clash of masses of air like this, and we are going to see a messy meteorological medley.
In the Lower Mainland, the highways are maintained by Main Road, where crews will be working around the clock.
As soon as we start plowing the snow, the trucks just keep going through their block, and as soon as they complete it, they come back and do it again, and just keep going until the snow stops.
For the Malahat Highway on Vancouver Island, crews plan to be out way before the sun rises.
Potentially there'll be an echelon plowing, so they'll all be side by side going down the highway and getting it in one pass.
Last week, snow created chaos for commuters in the Lower Mainland, and BCAA saw a significant spike in calls. All hands are on deck for the coming storm, and we stopped by for some winter driving advice.
Okay, we've got a snow tire on this vehicle. What are we looking for on our snow tires? What's giving us that traction?
Well, fundamentally, what gives us the traction is the space in between the treads, so the snow has somewhere to go. And you can find out if your tire is effective by finding along this edge, you will see a symbol that looks like a mountain that has a snowflake, like that right there.
And what about an emergency kit? We hear about that often, that it's important to have an emergency kit for these situations.
Absolutely. An emergency kit will be the most effective for you in the event that something does go wrong. You'll keep some extra clothes in there in case your engine does shut off so you can stay warmer. You want to keep some snacks in there so that if you're sitting around for a few hours, you know, nobody wants to be hangry in that situation either. You want to keep something high visible in the event that you do have to exit the vehicle and you need to be seen. Safety, safety, safety.
Ahead of the snowstorm, the advice remains the same from the province, BCAA, and local municipalities.
Don't go out on the roads unless you absolutely have to. Stay home, take a snow day. It's best for us to get out there and manage the snow when there's less traffic on the highways.
The snowfall is expected to last for much of Wednesday, easing by the evening. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Surrey.
Snow preparations are also underway in Nanaimo, where up to 5 centimeters are expected to fall overnight, with plenty more likely to come tomorrow. Temperatures are expected to dip to -6 with wind chill.
I hope people are prepared. We talked last week about making sure that you got snow tires on, you got your boots, you got your shovel and your salt ready. This is going to be a much more significant event than what we saw last week.
He says people ought to leave their garbage bins out all day as pickup may be delayed by the snow. And if your garbage day does get held, you can check the city website to find your updated pickup day. Let's go to the sky now. Darius Madavi joins us with a first look at the weather, timing, how much, what's going to happen.
Oh, still plenty of activity, Dan. Even though temperatures have retreated, only extreme cold warning still in the north of Alberta. We do have that Arctic outflow warning for parts of the Central Coast. But of course, the big story is the snow across the entirety of southern BC, but in particular here on the south coast. We are worried about around 10 to 30 centimeters of snow. And I think it's fair to say worried instead of expecting, because it will affect the commute regardless of what happens. Now, in terms of accumulation, you can see plenty coming everywhere south of Prince George, but in particular here on the south coast, I think people are going to be a little bit worried about is these snowfall totals, where in the next 36 hours, we are expecting anywhere from 10 to 20 centimeters of snow across places close to the water, but much more possible inland, up to 20 to 30 centimeters for parts of the valley, as well as more inland parts of metro, or higher elevation parts of Metro Vancouver. So plenty of activity still to come. When exactly is it happening? Well, we're watching this system roll in starting any time now. In the next couple hours, we're going to see it roll up, start to hit the southern part of the island first, continue to move in. We see a little bit of mix happening potentially in Vancouver, but it could be snow right from the get-go, because temperatures are hovering right around zero. And then we see it quickly transition to lots of snow across the area. Lots of snow still happening until tomorrow morning. Even into around noon, we start to see maybe a transition to mix some places close to the water, but further inland and at higher elevations going to continue to be snow, and that could be the case downtown and close to the water as well. And it's not until late in the day that we see that system start to retreat, and the next one rolls in Thursday, but we're still watching to figure out what exactly will happen there. So for now, worry about tomorrow. Avoid driving if at all possible, especially if you don't have snow tires.
Good idea. Thanks very much, Darius. We'll check in later. Now, with that forecast in place, many people will be watching the roads tomorrow, especially given the commuting snarls of last week. But as Justin McElroy explains, there are reasons why this region seems to perpetually struggle with snow.
There's another snow warning in the forecast for Metro Vancouver, which could mean this could soon happen again. That was just last week, with just a couple inches of snow on the ground. It led to the same mocking from the rest of Canada that we usually get, and based on the weather forecast, it could happen again. But there are reasons why we seem to struggle more with snow than other parts of this country. Here is a chart. It shows the amount big cities in Canada budgeted for snow removal in 2022. And there, at the bottom, are the 21 municipalities of Metro Vancouver combined. Now, of course, snow does get cleaned here one way or the other, but it means that we have much smaller fleets with less fancy equipment and less operational capacity than other cities. In addition, the region is a complex patchwork with more bridges and more municipalities than any other populated area of the country, making it hard for a fast, coordinated response. But you can't entirely blame the government. After all, snow tires aren't mandatory here, and historically, BC has lagged behind the national average in terms of pickup. Add it up, and it's not quite a recipe for disaster, but it certainly is an explanation for why things here are a little slipperier than the rest of the country. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Still with the roads, a horrific crash in the BC interior has killed 4 people and left another person in critical condition. It happened on Highway 97 near Monty Lake, about a 35-minute drive southeast of Kamloops. The RCMP says it appears 2 vehicles collided head-on. The drivers were declared dead at the scene. Mounties say they are notifying family and next of kin and trying to figure out what led to that crash. Vancouver police say there has been an uptick in hate crimes in the city amid the Israel-Hamas war. Members of the Jewish and Muslim communities have been targeted over the last 3 months. And as John Hernandez reports, there worries even more attacks could be going unreported.
This behavior cannot be normalized and will not be tolerated in this city.
A warning from Vancouver police after a concerning surge in hate crimes.
In 2023, the Vancouver Police Department received and thoroughly investigated 265 reports of hate-motivated incidents. The number 265 marks an overall increase of 31% from 2022.
Vancouver police say the rise in hate incidents can largely be attributed to the Israel-Hamas war. Incidents have taken place at local protests and in the broader community. Reports of anti-Semitism increased by 62% in 2023. Of the 47 anti-Semitic hate incidents reported during the year, 33 occurred after October 7th, the day the war started. On Tuesday, police detailed a number of the attacks.
An 87-year-old man was headbutted and injured on Commercial Drive by a man waving a Palestinian flag in early November. The victim, a man of Jewish descent, had taken issue when he saw the accused waving the flag and yelling "Free Palestine."
Police have also investigated about 10 incidents of Islamophobia since the war started.
These events include incidents of graffiti and hateful commentary written across the wall of a community center, saying all Muslims should die.
Local community leaders disturbed by the trend that they often see firsthand.
This is the call log of the threatening phone calls that staff members on my staff receive. It is deeply concerning and very scary.
We, of course, have beefed up our security here locally around the clock to make sure that if anything does happen, it gets reported right away.
Concerns that continue to fuel calls for peace both here and abroad.
You know, when I see 62% increase, it's not necessary to get your point across by spewing hate at another group.
There are other peaceful ways and means to address these issues, and talking to our world leaders, talking to your MP, talking to those lawmakers.
So far, 9 people have been charged. Police say more incidents are likely unreported and are encouraging victims to come forward. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Supporters of the Drug User Liberation Front, or DULF, gathered at the downtown Vancouver law courts today, calling for an end to what they say is the group's criminalization. DULF has admitted to handing out illegal drugs to users deemed at risk of overdosing, but it's something they argue saves lives. In October, DULF co-founders Eris Nix and Jeremy Calicum were arrested at 2 East Vancouver homes where cocaine, heroin, and meth were seized.
Jeremy and Eris are also an inspiration, and they're on the right side of history. And it's worth mentioning that every injection site, every drug user group, every policy change originated with people having the clarity to break unjust laws.
The DULF co-founders' first scheduled appearance in court was also today. If you are in Ladner, Tawasin, and Delta, or maybe just going through them today, you may have noticed a stink. Fortis BC says there has been a, quote, controlled odorant release near Ladner. Police say that has alarmed some people, but the smell will dissipate over time. Several people, though, online reported the fumes were overwhelming them and making them feel sick. We're hoping to hear more from Fortis on this release, and we'll bring you any updates later tonight. A Vancouver couple has now been fined $3,500 for leaving out food for animals in Stanley Park. The couple in their 70s was arrested by conservation officers in September 2021, a day after the park fully reopened after being shut down for weeks to kill aggressive coyotes. From December 2020 until August of the next year, 45 people reported being bitten by coyotes in the park. Provincial Court Judge James Sutherland says today's fine is meant to be a deterrent to people who choose to leave out food for wild animals. Well, it's happened again. Another truck has hit another Lower Mainland overpass, this time with a helicopter in tow. Monday afternoon, a commercial truck hit the Gilmore overpass eastbound on Highway 1 in Burnaby. The truck was carrying part of a helicopter, and while the driver had received an oversized permit, the Transportation Ministry claims the height exceeded what was stated. The truck was operated by International Machine Transport. All 20 of that company's vehicles have been suspended immediately until an investigation is finished. In other transportation news, BC Ferries will be adding 4 new hybrid electric vessels to its fleet. It's just awarded a contract to build Island-class vessels. Damen Shipyards Group in the Netherlands will build the Island-class ships. They'll carry at least 47 vehicles and up to 390 passengers as well as crew. Those ships will start running by 2027, connecting Nanaimo Harbor with Gabriola Island, as well as Campbell River and Quadra Island. In Elkford, about 20 kilometers west of the Alberta border, the Little Mittens Animal Rescue Association is trying to find a fox to remove a hook stuck in its face. Volunteers say the fox may have gnawed on a fishing rod on someone's property. The animal has been seen on neighborhood cameras. They say it doesn't appear to be in distress, though. Conservation officers have allowed the rescue to set up a trap in order to catch it. Anyone who sees that little fox is asked to call Little Mittens Animal Rescue. A bid by telecommunications giant Telus to appeal more than a dozen property assessments could be doomed because of a typo. The company missed a crucial deadline and is now heading to BC Supreme Court. On the story is our Jason Proctor. Jason, how did this happen?
Well, so this has to do with the process by which you appeal your property assessment. Telus wanted to put in appeals to 18 of its properties that held cellular towers on them. And so basically you have until January 31st every year to do this. This was for last year. And they sent off all their documentation. They'd done it before, but they had a new employee in their tax department who put the email address with an extra E. So instead of greater.vancouver@bcassessment.ca, it was greater.vancouver@bcassessment.ca. And so they missed the deadline, and this is a phenomenally unforgiving process. They went to the appeal board, said, well, this was circumstances beyond our control, so let us please put in our appeals. But the appeal board said basically no dice. This was within your control to check because it's an email address.
And so what does this tell us? And you have to imagine this is a lot of money at stake. What does this tell us about the I guess, tension or battles, if we can call it that, between Telus, BC Assessment, and then cities and towns?
Yeah, because this is the other thing that this whole process brings out. This was actually a battle over sort of the tax status that BC Assessment puts on these properties. And so what Telus is ultimately trying to do is to have themselves pay tax to the municipalities in a way, I guess, that would fix the tax to the value of the cellular towers, as opposed to this other way that the municipalities would favor, that would see them under a different kind of legislation pay 1% of gross revenues from wireless subscribers who, use the services they provide through those towers. You can imagine that would be a lot of money.
There could be a lot of money at stake. Jason Proctor, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Global love for Kpop is not new, despite many fans not being able to speak or understand Korean. Experts say the genre attracts people for many reasons, from the high-quality production to the choreography to the big, engaging live performances. As Sally Lee shows us, it's certainly hard to stop watching.
Dubbed the Hallyu Wave, the South Korean entertainment industry has taken the world by storm with its catchy pop tunes and addictive dramas. K-pop has become a global phenomenon, with groups like BTS, Blackpink, and Stray Kids becoming household names. There is another wave, however, and it's hit the BC coast.
Coinciding with the rise of K-pop from 2015 to 2018 or so was the rise of Korean hip-hop.
죽고 산 게 엊그제 나긴 한두 개는 뭐 풀옵션인데 찍혀도 내 뜻대로면 no problem with that. Here's a selfie 다 폰에서 엄지대.
Many internationally renowned artists such as Simon Dominic, DPR Live, and PH1 have performed in Vancouver over the past few years, with dedicated fans waiting hours in line prior to these shows. Last April, Epic High returned to Vancouver for the third time as part of their North American tour.
Vancouver, can you make some noise for Epic?
Growing up, I listened to Epic High. Tableau, Two Cuts, and Mitra are a huge inspiration to hip-hop lovers, especially Korean hip-hop. Tableau's lyrics are amazing and relatable.
I'm a big fan of the genre and the band. I started listening to the music just last year. I don't really understand the language, but I don't need to understand the language. I can just vibe.
Daniel Ha, CEO of Kohai, has booked several K-hip-hop shows in Vancouver and has seen the popularity rise.
A lot of hip-hop groups and labels like AOMG, even like Benzino, Epic High, they started to gain a lot of traction in North America. And partly that's due to the fact that it's a little easier for hip-hop artists to tour rather than K-pop artists, which may come with an entourage of 20 to 50 people. So the barrier of entry was much easier. And I think because of the notoriety and the fanfare of K-pop, a lot of those fans can enjoy Korean hip-hop as well, while bringing in just hip-hop fans in general. Say, hey, this is kind of cool. We're not really into K-pop, but hip-hop in the Korean way is pretty good too.
Canadian fans have a wide variety of ethnic backgrounds, with many who don't speak the language. but that doesn't hold them back.
Listening to their music beforehand, like, okay, yeah, I can vibe with this. It's very, very good music, which I think transcends language.
Music has no boundaries. A language is just a language. You can relate to it by translation, or you can connect through it through heart, through beats, through songs. It's just whatever a person can relate to it.
It is a good feeling to be with people that like the same thing you do.
Because the genre itself has roots in American hip-hop, that translates to fans actually being able to listen, to enjoy that music, whatever language it may be.
Ha remains tight-lipped about who Kohai will be bringing to North America next, but promises that more concerts are in the works. For many fans, this comes as no surprise.
It's more noticeable now because Vancouver has a bigger fandom, so like everyone's trying to get like more concerts, more artists come in, and it's just a huge wave that is starting up, and I don't think it's going to stop.
Sally Lee, CBC News, Vancouver.
You can now be expected to be asked to tip at bars, cafes, even florists, but bridal boutiques? After the break, why some experts are saying enough with tipflation. Stick around. And hello to everyone watching us on our commercial-free live stream tonight. Thanks for being here. The federal government is poised to make a major fisheries decision later this month that will ripple throughout parts of Canada. It will decide who gets to catch the massive redfish population in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. As Paul Withers tells us, it's created a major interprovincial battle.
Before the Gulf redfish population collapsed in the early 90s, Nova Scotia's offshore fleet held half the overall quota. In the decades since, the companies carried out science surveys for fisheries and oceans, maintained a small fishery in adjacent areas, and spent millions on plants and licenses in anticipation of a reopening. Now that the population has rebounded, Quebec and Newfoundland interests are lobbying for a piece of the action, in part to compensate for a drastic reduction in shrimp quota for fleets in their province.
This is incredibly concerning, so it's not just me that's...
Nova Scotia wants Ottawa to maintain historic shares.
I would like for our quotas to be respected, in particular with this one, when our companies were the ones that pioneered this industry from the get-go.
Last fall, he told his federal counterpart to change these established allocations would bring significant economic hardships to these Nova Scotia-based fleets and the hundreds of jobs in coastal Nova Scotia communities that they support, warning the apparent trend of altering long-standing quota agreements threatens to destabilize investment in seafood infrastructure, market and product development. Scotia Harvest spent $14 million on a state-of-the-art plant in Digby. Its president says the only decision here is the size of the quota. Who gets to catch it has already been settled.
We have expected quota. We made investments around it. We've continued to make investments. Others have, not just my company, but there's been investments in boats. Licenses and quotas have been bought, sold, and transferred between different participants. I just don't see how we do without it. I don't see what the alternative is, because if those quotas are not going to be respected, if those transactions lead to some harm to communities or to existing participants in favor of others, this is a zero-sum game.
Meanwhile, Federal Fisheries Minister Diane Leboutillier did not respond to Kent Smith. Her office says an announcement will be made at the end of the month. Paul Withers, CBC News, Halifax.
Many Canadians have been feeling the squeeze of high costs on all kinds of things and the pressure to tip at more places. Now some bridal shops in Edmonton are asking people to leave a gratuity when they buy a wedding dress. As Pippa Reid explains, some critics say that is going too far.
If you've ever planned a wedding, chances are you've tipped your caterer or perhaps even your DJ. But did you tip the consultant who sold you your wedding dress? Well, some bridal stores in Edmonton are asking people to do just that.
I was very surprised. I wasn't expecting to see a tip option, but when it did and she said, no, don't worry about it, like, no, let's just pay for your dress, it kind of eased me a bit. And I'm like, no, girl, you deserve this tip.
Brittany Henderson-Curry says she left a 15% tip on a $1,700 dress. If you do the math, that's $255. She says she felt great about leaving a tip because the service she received was worth it. The store owner brought in the tip option because brides were asking how they could leave a tip.
The girls here, because they work really hard, and I've been doing this for a long time, so my body can feel what I've done, right? Like, it's hard to bend over. Sometimes we take off our shoes when brides aren't here. Like, it's uncomfortable.
I called around, and of the 8 stores I reached out to, 3 have introduced a tipping option. And Powell says it's even more common in the US.
These brides are tipping like $200, $300 after the dress purchase, right? So there's large tips, or we don't get large tips here.
Experts say this all speaks to something called tip creep, with more and more businesses asking you to tip.
Creeping into the wedding dress, the creeping into, the candle shop or the oil lube place. It's like, my goodness, when is this gonna stop? Who's, is my doctor, is my kid's teacher gonna ask me to tip next?
Bruce McAdam says some business owners have one big reason for supporting tip creep.
These are typically minimum wage employers or slightly above minimum wage. And as a recruiting tool, they can now mention that you will be receiving some tips as well.
But some critics say tipping on a wedding dress is going too far.
If you want your consultants to make money, be appreciated, then pay them more. Don't put it on the customers to make sure that is they're doing that.
We'll have to wait and see whether wedding dress tipping becomes the norm in Canada. But if you're planning a wedding right now, you might want to consider budgeting extra alongside all the other expenses that come along with your big day.
Pippa Reid reporting. Joining us now for a closer look at how tipping in service industries works is Kimberly Brownlee, Professor of Philosophy at UBC and Canada Research Chair in Ethics and Political and Social Philosophy. Kimberly, thanks for joining us. The option to tip is spreading to more services, but is there a clear system by which this happens?
It's a good question. At the moment, it still seems to be very ad hoc. We tip the Uber driver, we tip the hotel porter, we tip the hairstylist, but not the substitute teacher, not the seasonal fruit picker, not the theater actor.
Now, we just heard from a bride who was hesitant to leave a gratuity, but then did so because she felt the designer, quote, deserved it. And as we heard, wedding dresses are expensive. What impact does the pressure to show monetary appreciation have?
So I think that pressure moves it out of the space of a gratuity. Gratuity means gratuitous, sort of beyond the call of duty. It moves into a space of duty where you feel obligated to do this in order to show that you valued the service you received. But it's in a way a strange way to show valuing because we wouldn't tip our family doctor. I've never received a tip as a university professor, and it would feel strange to do that. And so I'm wondering if part of it is that we tend to tip in those industries that it's maybe easier to devalue, to view as low skilled, to view as you are showing largesse, sort of a noble gesture as the customer, rather than the person being paid well and being properly valued for their work by their employer.
Is it almost like a pity gesture?
I'm wondering if that's part of it, and because it doesn't happen in some industries where it would seem to have a similar profile, someone who's precarious, someone who's doing casual work. It's the people we see who receive the tip. So the invisible worker, the seasonal fruit picker, or the back behind the scenes staff, they don't get the tip, but they're in the same financial situation as the waiter in front of us.
We do know that in some restaurants, and based on many years of experience in the restaurant industry, there are pooling of tips that are given to servers. But regardless of whether it's appropriate or not, some service workers rely on those extra tips for that extra bit of income. The argument, though, what about customers who may say or really can't afford that?
So when we're greeted in the coffee shop with the 3 tipping options, many of us would think I'm being asked to judge how well I was served, and I would leave 30% if I was really happy. But maybe another way to see that is if I have a high income, I should leave the 30%, but it should in some way be means tested. The customer who can't afford to leave a large tip shouldn't feel duty bound to show gratitude in that same sort of strong financial way that someone well off could. But that's not our history of tipping. We tend to use the tip to signal how happy we were, not how much we can give.
Kimberly Brownlee, Professor of Philosophy at UBC, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Strep infections are rising across Canada. And while often harmless, why the virus can sometimes turn deadly. That story's next.
As the temperatures plummet, the chaos rises at Happy Hound Spray and Play. Since the start of the cold snap, the phones at the indoor dog park have been ringing off the hook.
We went from pretty steady numbers, good growth, because we're a pretty new business, to just an astronomical increase in phone calls, in reservations. So calls went from, a standard number to over like 200 a day. We've been trying to keep up. Our reservations, we've been booked out. We added extra reservations to accommodate more people coming into the parks. So we've adjusted all that. But yeah, people have just been coming in droves.
The park opened in October and has a unique setup. It's split into sections, so big dogs like Rex can splash to their heart's content. While next door, the Frenchies of Edmonton can meet up for some socializing. Many of the owners found their way here for the first time, desperate to get their dogs running after days of being cooped up inside.
Very hard. We've been having to play some games around the house. I randomly was searching some indoor places to take him, and it popped up. And being it had water, I knew he'd love it.
He's almost 6, so it's not the worst, but we bought him some new toys, and 3 kids, they just play with him, and he runs around the house, and so it hasn't been the worst, but it definitely feels it. He feels the lack of walks and energy.
That energy seems to be burning off inside this park, a solution these owners are grateful for, especially with cold temperatures expected to linger for most of the week. Emily Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Edmonton.
Health authorities across Canada are sounding the alarm over an increase in Strep A. It often causes milder infections, but as Lauren Pelly explains, if it gets deep into blood or tissue, it can turn deadly.
We'd always read a book before bed.
Christina Heckes says her daughter Quinn started feeling sick last March, just a few weeks shy of her 6th birthday.
We did the things every parent does, the Tylenol, the Advil.
By phone, a doctor told Heckes it was likely just a lingering cold. Suddenly, her daughter took a turn.
Her breathing is labored. Nothing's happened with her fever. It's been 3 days. I said, okay, that's it, no more. We're going to the hospital.
X-rays showed Quinn had pneumonia, and later tests showed her organs were failing. She died within hours.
I don't know how to tell other people how fast it was. My daughter was sitting, watching a movie, having a conversation with her nurses, and not 6 hours later, she was gone.
The cause, a common bacterial infection. Group A streptococcus is usually linked to milder illness like strep throat. But in some cases, bacteria invade the bloodstream, rapidly causing sepsis, even death. New national data provided to CBC News shows infections have spiked, with 4,600 reports of invasive Strep A by the end of 2023, the highest annual total recorded in Canada.
So we've been seeing an increased level of invasive Group A streptococcal disease.
Ontario officials say in that province, 48 people have died this season, including 6 children.
It's really difficult, of course, for the families and those caring for them. It's something we're tracking closely.
2 people have died so far this year in New Brunswick. And in December, BC officials warned there were twice as many cases of invasive strep among people under 20 than the province expected. Warning signs include a fever, dizziness, confusion, or intense pain. Those symptoms require fast medical attention and antibiotics. But
even though that's the right drug for the right bug, there isn't a 100% success rate.
Lauren Pelly reporting. Canada's overall inflation rate ticked back up to 3.4% in December. Those are in the latest numbers from Statistics Canada. Analysts say it's evidence the road to curbing inflation is going to be bumpy. Here's more from Nisha Patel.
The basics cost Canadians even more in December. Rent and the interest on mortgages. Groceries and gas prices all up compared to a year ago. It helped inflation heat back up to 3.4%.
This will certainly, give the Bank of Canada pause, as it indicates we're not out of the woods yet on inflation.
Some prices are falling as consumers rein in their spending. Travel services cost less, and so do home entertainment systems.
We have seen very clear slowing in the economy. For instance, if you look at GDP, it basically hasn't grown in the last 9 months.
The Bank of Canada wants to see inflation cool before it cuts the interest rates that have Canadians paying more to borrow money. Experts forecast that could come later this year, but the situation is still fragile.
Because things are so volatile, you can't really make very many forecasts.
Conflict in the Red Sea could throw the inflation fight off track. Houthi rebels are attacking cargo ships, disrupting a key shipping route.
A lot of predictability is very, very important in the shipping industry, so it's causing some operational concerns that way.
Shipping costs have spiked since the attack started. Experts say companies could start to feel the strain.
We have those delays in transit times. If that continues, the impact continues to magnify throughout the supply chain.
And while the system isn't as stressed as it was during the pandemic, prolonged tensions could fan the flames of inflation once more.
To me, the single biggest risk is if we had a backup in energy prices.
For now, inflation is still above the Bank of Canada's 2% target. Most analysts predict there won't be any interest rate cuts until June. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
There's some disappointing news for Canadians looking to save money on groceries. Loblaws says it will no longer offer 50% off on perishable items nearing their expiry date. More now from Brett Ruskin in Halifax.
One way you can sometimes save money at the grocery store is to go to those discount carts, those bins, to pick up something like this. A sticker, 50% off this head of broccoli. I just picked this up here at this Halifax grocery store under the Loblaws brand. This sticker on this soon to expire broccoli piece of broccoli is going to expire itself as well, with Loblaws announcing and sharing details that the 50% off stickers are soon to be 30%. That's at Real Canadian Superstore, that's at Atlantic Superstore, No Frills as well, all of the brands under the Loblaw umbrella. So why is this happening? Well, Loblaw corporate communications managers are telling us that there is a wide range of discounts being offered right now, between 30%, 50%, depending on the store. So this offers some predictability and some consistency nationwide, also consistency between Loblaws and its competitors as well. It says that there is a variety of different discounts offered in-store, in flyer, as well as a flash food app. It's called a flash food app. That is the one that Loblaws is advising customers to use, but instead of picking out a piece of broccoli like I did, you have to select a box of a variety of different pieces of produce based on a single picture that you have. So there might be a big bag of onions with a cantaloupe and a soft looking cucumber and things that you may not always want in that purchase. You don't get to see and feel and see what you're buying before you purchase it. You secure it with the app, go and pick it up in store.
You're forced to buy a picture. You can't really see the product, and these products are not as fresh. And so you want, as a consumer, you want to see your product before you actually buy it. You can't see if there's molding or anything like that. You basically have to make that leap of faith before you purchase anything.
And so grocery chains pushing customers to use that app to perhaps save some money, but also get rid of some of its soon to expire produce. The main takeaway, those 50% off stickers that you see on produce that's set to expire soon like this will now read 30% at Loblaws stores all across the country. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has won an historic victory in the first test of his campaign to return to the White House. He defeated his next closest rivals by an unprecedented 30 points to be the choice as Republican nominee in the Iowa caucuses.
They said, well, if you win by 12%, that's a big win. That's going to be very hard to do. Well, I think we more than doubled that, I guess, tripled it maybe.
Trump won in almost all of the 99 counties in the state, taking more than 50% support. Nikki Haley came in third with 19%, while Ron DeSantis was second with 21%. The next Republican presidential primary is in New Hampshire next Tuesday. Now, despite that win, Trump was off the campaign trail and back in court today. As Chris Reyes explains, he turned up at a New York courtroom as jury selection got underway in a defamation case.
E. Jean Carroll arrived this morning at this New York federal courthouse, as did Donald Trump, to face off in a civil trial that's already found Trump liable for defaming and sexually abusing Carroll in a department store dressing room in the mid-90s. Carroll won that case in May. A jury awarded her $5 million. This second trial, this case will determine damages coming from comments that Trump made back in 2019, accusing Carroll of lying in order to sell books, claiming that he's never met her and denying the rape allegations altogether. He made those comments while he was president. In the courtroom, Carroll's lawyers said that Trump used the biggest microphone in the world to attack her. He's made those comments since.
I have no idea who this woman is. I have absolutely no idea. The whole thing is ridiculous that this is even a case. This should never have happened.
Carroll and Trump sat in the same room, not making any eye contact, as the judge spent the better part of the day with jury selection, explaining to the jurors exactly what their job is. He reminded them that this case is entirely about damages and that for the purpose of this case, it's already been determined that Trump sexually abused Carroll and defamed her. When the judge said that, Trump very visibly started to shake his head. Trump's team, at the beginning of this trial this morning, tried to get the judge to dismiss the case altogether. That was quickly overruled. Trump's team also confirmed that they will be calling Donald Trump to the witness stand. He's expected to testify on Monday, with a verdict coming shortly after that. Carroll is seeking $10 million in damages. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
If you have one, is your New Year's resolution to eat healthier? We're going to speak with a dietitian about the health benefits of Korean food. That's next.
How did the meeting go, sir?
Very good.
Ukraine's president pleading for more support at a time when commitments by some are wavering. Vladimir Zelensky mingled with the business and political elite in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. In his speech, he urged countries to pass more punishing sanctions.
Putin loves money above all. The more billions he and his oligarchs, friends and accomplices lose, the more likely he will regret starting this war.
Nearly 2 years into Russia's full-scale invasion, there are no signs that Vladimir Putin is prepared to pull back. It's quite obvious, he said. Not only did Ukraine's counteroffensive fail, but the initiative is completely in the hands of the Russian armed forces. In the eastern Ukrainian city of Donetsk, which Russia and local separatists seized back in 2014, a small but apparently enthusiastic group lined up to pledge their support for Putin, who will run and almost certainly win the presidential election again. We are doing this absolutely voluntarily, said one man. We are here to sign our support. And there was another show of cooperation in Moscow from a country that Russia increasingly relies on. North Korea's foreign minister visited the Kremlin. The U.S. and Ukraine have accused Pyongyang of supplying Russia with weapons, including ballistic missiles, which hit Kharkiv earlier this month. Ukraine says it's running short on ammunition and missile defense systems.
We're working to secure bipartisan support for the necessary resources to supply Ukraine with the weapons it needs.
But for now, that $60 billion aid package remains stalled in Congress. As for the European Union, it says Ukraine will receive the $50 billion it promised, even if Hungary keeps blocking the move. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
So I know when I really like a song, if within the first 3 seconds, I'm already vibing to it.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond.
It's not one person dictating what good music is, it's the community sharing what good music is.
Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
New Year typically comes with renewed pressure to make healthier choices. Our Anna Park caught up with a Fraser Health dietitian about some of the health benefits of Korean food. Take a look.
I don't know how this is going to go. I've only bought this for my family. That's the 2 braised potatoes right there.
Potatoes, good source of complex carbohydrate that can keep you full for longer period of time. And it's actually a good source of vitamin C. People don't naturally automatically think that potatoes is a source of vitamin C, but depending on how much you eat, you can get some vitamin C from it. It's a good source of fiber to keep you full. That can help with managing your blood sugar. Although I think sometimes Korean banchan, it's prepared with like sweet soy sauce, so it depends on also how you prepare it.
Then we have, I actually don't know what this is, but it looks good. It's seasoned dried pollock. No idea, but I have eaten this, and I to this day don't know what it is. So we're just gonna look that up after. I bought 2 stir-fried anchovies as well, so that's the 2 of those.
The dried anchovies, they can be quite salty, but also when you're consuming those anchovies, that you're eating a whole fish. So it's a very good source of calcium, which is very important for building your bones. Korean food, that traditionally people don't consume a lot of dairy, which is a good source of calcium in the Western diet, but they get calcium from other sources like the anchovy.
And I think I got, this is the other fish cake, so I'll just leave that there.
Fish cake, I wouldn't really say it's a superfood. It's a processed food. In moderation, it's a good food, but I don't think it's a particularly healthy food.
And I got 2 of the fresh seaweed.
Fresh seaweed is actually one of my favorite Korean foods. It's very high in fiber, and for a plant-based food, it's a sea plant. It's also high in amino acid, that part of the protein. It's high in many different vitamins, and especially vitamin B, which is important for your energy levels and nervous system. Also, interestingly, seaweed is also very high in antioxidants, so can have protective effects on your body against certain chronic diseases like heart disease, hypertension, diabetes.
Okay. But this one is more salty.
I'm a big fan of kimchi,
Japanese.
Get her
get in there.
Well, kimchi, I think it's actually pretty common, so I don't know if your colleagues, if anyone was totally unfamiliar with kimchi, but kimchi is very well known for its probiotic properties, so it's good bacteria. There are lots of interest about its effect in your gut health, like digestive health, but overall immune health, and as well as something like your mood, weight management. There's lots of interest and research going on. Koreans can add kimchi to everything. We add it to, pizza, we add it to bread. So, I think it's a very versatile and healthy food.
Darius Mandavi joins us now with the BC-wide weather forecast. Do you like Korean food?
Oh, I do. I do.
It's tasty stuff.
Oh, yeah. So spicy kimchi sounds really good today, especially because we're going to need to warm up into tomorrow as the snow really arrives. Now,
transition.
Yeah, really well done, right? Segue. Now, today, compared to yesterday, we have seen these temperatures come back up a little bit as that retreats, which means we're no longer colder than a Iqaluit, but we are getting more snow than them in the next 24 hours. So we're hovering right around 0, so right in the danger zone for we might see this snow and this sort of mix of some nasty sleet and freezing rain as well. And you can see that for Victoria, Vancouver, and Kelowna, significant dump expected, especially compared to what they would usually be getting with a system like this. Just the conditions are just right to see some significant snowfall. Now, here are our accumulations across parts of the south coast. Plenty of snow coming across the board. And again, these are some moderate amounts we could see locally and even in some wider areas more than this. So this is sort of the middle, the most likely situation, but we could see a little bit less, or we could see a lot more. And just because conditions are right for all this snowfall doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen. This is Vancouver. We do see sort of instances where things don't pan out exactly as we think, but plan for the snow because it seems by far the most likely situation. So here are the totals across the rest of BC because there is lots coming. We have all these snowfall, we have all these warnings, lots of snowfall warnings, lots of extreme weather warnings. So be prepared because across southern BC, we're looking at plenty happening. And I just want to run through what's going to happen one more time. We have this system roll in, starts as a bit of rain and mix for the southern part of the island, quickly transitions to snow across the board, across pretty much the entirety of the south coast, with the exception of places like Tofino along the west coast, where even there we might see a bit of a mix. And then here in Vancouver, plenty of snow right through the day, right through the night and into the day. It's not until noon we might see that transition, but even there, very much up in the air. We might see snow right through the afternoon, might transition to some nasty freezing rain mix, but regardless of what exactly happens with that precipitation, going to be a nasty time on the roads. And then the next system rolls in Thursday, like I said, but this one, once again, if we're having trouble figuring exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, I wouldn't count on what we're going to say for Thursday just yet. So be prepared for that. In terms of conditions, plenty of snow across the board. Just getting sunnier up north because they've already gotten their big dump. And here for our 5-day forecast, you can see lots of snow tomorrow, transitioning into some rain Thursday, potentially some snow mixed in there as well. Just depends exactly how those temperatures shake out. So we'll be keeping a close eye on it tomorrow, Dan.
No kidding. Thanks very much, Darius.
Thank you.
Refreshing the treasures to be found. We're going to catch up with some young geocachers in Kamloops who are making the hunt all the merrier. You'll want to see this.
bronze for Canada at the 2024 U18 Women's Worlds.
Well, the Women's Under-18 World Championship wrapped up this week in Zug, Switzerland. So a perfect time to bring on Carissa Donkin, who is at Montreal's practice rink right now. So thanks for jumping on the phone and chatting with us. And we're going to start, obviously, with Team Canada. Not the result they wanted as they lose to Czechia in the semifinal. They end up with the bronze medal, but I'm going to ask you the same question we always ask when a women's Team Canada loses at an international tournament. Sure, it's bad for Canada, but is it good for women's hockey?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a disappointing finish for a team that looked really dominant throughout this tournament and, you know, looked like they were going to be in that gold medal game for sure. And maybe we're going to go down as one of the best U18 rosters we've ever seen to wear a Canadian sweater. But it is good for the game. I mean, it shows that other countries are catching up. I still think that, you know, a lot of other countries don't quite have the depth that Canada and USA have, you know, on the bottom of their lineup. I think you saw that in the gold medal game with Czechia and USA, but, you know, absolutely, it's good news. And we saw Sweden in the gold medal game last year, a bit of a surprise when they beat USA, and then, of course, Czechia this year. And just looking at Czechia's rise over the last few years, they qualified for the Olympics for the very first time in 2022, and then they won medals at the World Championships, back-to-back bronze medals, and now, of course, a silver medal at U18. So big things happening for that country.
Okay, so two players I have to ask you about because despite the loss, they certainly put a spotlight on themselves. Caitlin Kramer goes out and breaks Marie-Philippe Poulin's points record. Anytime you do that, people are going to be talking about you. And Chloe Primerano, as a defender, leads the tournament in scoring. So, question number one, how quick is it before we see these two getting a call, maybe from the national team? I know they're young, but anytime you do that, you know that's what people are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They're both special players. We saw that during the tournament. And I think there's no doubt they're going to be on that senior national team at some point. So, yeah, I mean, the question is how soon? A couple things to consider with Team Canada right now. I mean, you have to factor in the PWHL effect. So I think there's going to be some players who are getting looks from Team Canada who maybe haven't been on that roster before because now they're shining on a different stage. So you're competing with them. You know, one of the problems with that development pipeline is that there isn't a tournament in between the U18s and the senior national level. So there's no Women's World Juniors. There's a development team that, you know, plays a series against the USA every summer, but that's kind of it. So it's a bit of a hole. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the two of them, you know, at least get an invitation to camp, get them in there. But, you know, as for when we see them actually playing on the senior national team, I think it'll be a couple years.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On January 24th, join CBC British Columbia's Matt Allen as host of a special screening of an episode from CBC's Black Life Untold Stories, an 8-part docuseries that reframes the rich and complex histories of Black experiences in Canada. Presented in partnership with the Black Life Impact Foundation, the event features a screening of one episode and a Q&A session. Tickets at cbc.ca/BC.
Geocaches are hidden containers, often in hard-to-get-to spots. It's like a 21st century treasure hunt. And inside are usually some goodies.
But some young Kamloops treasure hunters found the treats a little wanting, so they decided to spice things up. Jennifer Norwell caught up with the two young searchers.
My name is Kyla Fletcher. And I'm McKenna Fletcher. We're replacing a geocache here in Peterson Creek because the box was all broken and there was water coming inside.
My name is Erin Fletcher, and I am McKenna and Kylan's mom. We just were out for a walk one day, and my husband suggested it, so we looked one up, and there was one nearby, and we went and found it.
We've got some old duct tape in here, some empty CO2 cartridges. Yeah, the first one was really cool. We found a bunch of cool stuff, and the next few were pretty broken.
The kids wanted to make sure that other kids had better experiences, more like their first one.
If you find instead like a broken little geocache with nothing in it, that would be pretty disappointing. So we wanted wanted to make it better for all the people who come in here trying to find some treasures.
So there's a pencil and pad, to write your name in.
So we collected up some stuff and started replacing with better items, but then we quickly ran out of stuff, and so we put out a call to social media to see if we could collect some more.
So we were able to keep a couple things from the old one. There's a minion, a little patch, a doll shoe.
There's kind of this idea that young people are disconnected and that they don't give back, but that's really not true. If you give them a chance, lots of young people step up and do great things.
I would be much happier with the geocache they made.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National with the latest on the snow. See you then.
Good night.